Welcome to another episode of Things That Go Bump in the Night. Special guest again. Glad to have her back, Melina. How are you doing today? I missed you.
Good. I missed you too. Doing good. I'm enjoying the changing of the seasons. Now we're into spooky season, and for me that starts in really like September. But I have spooky stuff in my house all year round. I take advantage of the sales after spooky season because I
hmm
decorate my house with things like that. So
I have a Christmas tree and I have not taken down the Christmas tree. What I do is every time there's like, St. Patrick's Day or whatever it is, I redecorate it with that. And so I took down the patriotic and put up the Halloween on the Christmas tree.
that's
Um,
so funny that you say that because my grandmother did the same thing.
I guess
She actually wrote a children's book about. She called it something Little Christmas Tree. She tried to get it published, but she did that at some point. She did that every year. She would just decorate it for whatever holiday it was.
I know people look at me going, "Are you just lazy?" I go, "Well, you can call it lazy, but I mean, I take a lot of time and effort to do this. Now I have the Halloween tree up and it's going to go down. And then when it goes down, it goes into Christmas right through. And I do Mardi Gras and I do a lot of that stuff. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Um, I know that we last time we talked about some things, but I really want to talk to you about living with the ghost. And you grew up with that, and it's a big part of your life. And I really wanted to touch base on that this time.
So I was raised in a house with my great grandmother and my grandmother, and my grandfather and my brother and my two uncles. My older two uncles lived in the front of the house for some time. But ever since I can remember, that was my first memory of like somebody actually acknowledging a spirit with a name. She gave this Oscar was his name.
Oscar,
And
okay.
it was just not like a matter of fact thing, like, oh, that there's Oscar, oh, that must have been Oscar. And she would tell us stories about he would play in her hair, she said,
Ooh.
and there was a story of him pulling the sheets off of the bed at night and opening windows back in her back bedroom. Um, and pretty much just anything that occurred, she would just kind of blame it on Oscar, but it wasn't a joke. Like she really, so me personally, I never saw him. But there was definitely like another presence. You never felt alone in that house. It was just very,
Wow.
very apparent. And as a kid, of course, it was the unknown, so it was scary to me. And I was so little. I can remember, back, I don't know how old I was, but I can remember how tall I was in the bathroom. The bathroom sink was like this. Um, that was when things like I remember things being very active, and even up until the day she uh, died, which she died in that house. She saw the spirits before she passed. So she was sitting in the den, and my Aunt Paula, who's passed now, was there, and she said, "Who's that fella standing in the threshold
Wow.
upper up there?" Is what she said. "Oh, who's that fella up there?" And Paul said, "Hey, I don't see anybody. What's he look like?" And she said, "He's standing right there. He's got overalls on and he's got a hat on." And at this point, she was getting to, close to death, and they just would entertain it, and just say, "Well, is he good looking?" And she said, "Well, naturally." So we believe that that was him. It was a tall man. Um, we don't know if he was a part of the family. I don't know where she got that name, Oscar. Maybe some of my aunts and uncles might know. But even after, when she was passing, she also saw two little girl spirits running around chasing each other. And so that's another story. My Uncle Jody saw a little girl in the house. And I saw something short without a form. I did some digging. I went to the library years ago and I found out that there was a house that sat behind that house. And that the house I grew up in was already old. So it was owned by, I believe, the Myricks. I never could find anything. I did find some censuses, and I think I found that like at one point they had had a number of kids, and then one was just not there, and it was
Okay.
like a five. Now, don't quote me on this because this was like, Lord, I've had three children since then. Um, And I've been moved all over the place. But so my memory fails me. But I remember thinking, oh, that kind of makes sense. But I put it away because I could only get so far. And I'm not a genealogy buff. I don't really know how to look for stuff like that. But yeah, so he was the resident ghost, the main one. And I believe everybody in our family experienced something. Maybe my brother did. My brother's skeptical, but everybody else had some kind of story. Like I said, I never saw him, but I would have friends come over, and I had one friend. She would come over, and we slept in the fold-out couch up in the front bedroom. I mean, up in the front living room,
Hmm.
and all the lights were out, and the house was raised up off the ground. I guess because back in the day, like if it flooded, which really didn't make sense because it was up on the hill. They called the house on the hill. But we were asleep and there were no lights on. And she woke me up and she was like, who's up moving around, like stomping back and forth? It was pitch black. We didn't have any lamps on. And I was like, I don't hear anything. Well, the next day she was like, I know somebody was walking back and forth. And I never woke up. She would never spend the night with me again. She never came back. We're still friends. We were still friends, but she never would come back. And then I had a friend over, a guy friend of mine, Ryan Spradley, who he's passed now too. We used to sing together. He came over and I started hearing something in the front bedroom, which was where the little girl was seen. And I was like, I want you to hear this. I want to see if you can hear what I'm hearing. And I could hear a lady humming, almost like she was ironing, you know. Interesting too, what I remember is that my Mamaw Giles died up in the front of the house too. So I don't know. But we put our ears to the wall and I can remember us just sitting there and he was like, I said, what do you hear? And he was like, it sounds like a lady humming, like.
Wow.
So it's not just me. Other people that I brought into the house, experienced it. My family members did too. Um, Gosh, another story that's interesting about Oscar. This was before I was born, I think, or either I was too little to remember. But my grandmother, when my papa Griffin, her husband was alive. By the way, he drowned in the pond. So there's a lot of history there of people dying,
I
even
guess.
not we don't even know the stories before that. Um, but when he was still alive, he farmed and he had a taxi service called Duke Transportation, and they were doing okay, and they had maids in the house. And I don't remember maids, so I was either too little or I wasn't born. But she had a house cleaner, a maid, that was ironing one day, and Mamaw Duke had two figurines that they were still in the house. They're somewhere. I think I took them out of the storage and I have them in my boxes out there. But of George and Martha Washington, two little ceramic figures that she had up
Okay.
on her buffet tables, they said. And the story is that while the maid was ironing, those figurines started dancing off the table like that. And they
Okay.
fell. And I think one of their heads broke off. And that lady, she said, Miss Dukes, Miss Dukes, freaking out. And she wouldn't come back. So,
Well, let
yeah,
me ask you a
that's one of
question
those
because
stories.
growing up, did you become apathetic to what it was going around? You just said it was part of your life. It didn't really scare you anything. Not like your friends, just like I'm never coming over again.
I mean, I don't remember exactly. Like it was just normal. Yeah, it wasn't anything that I was super. I was curious. I didn't like to be alone in the house after that one experience that I had, but I don't remember it being, yeah, it was just kind of like, yeah, that's Oscar, and we would share stories if somebody would see something, and it was like entertaining, but we would just move along, you know, the way. It's weird. It's hard for me to like know how to answer that question because even now, the spirit world is still very real to me. I don't
Yes.
know
Mhm.
what it's like to not think about that every day. So, you
So,
know,
and like you said, it started as you were a kid, and it's continued on through your adult life.
yeah, I would say the first time I remember have a memory of the psychic abilities was when I was 10 and I dreamed that my mother was going to die. And then when I was 11, it actually happened. But there's another story about the car accident, which is interesting because the anniversary will be August, not August, sorry. It's hard for me to talk about it, but I will. October 29th, it was 1993, was when the wreck was, when we had
Okay.
our wreck. Um, it was my stepdad, my mother, who was pregnant at the time, me and my brother in the car. And they were taking me to a hayride to a friend. We had moved into a brand new house. Our boxes were not even unpacked. They were taking me back over to the town that we had lived in to go spend the night with my friend. And it was a back road in Union County, Arkansas. No street lights. It was drizzling. I can remember like looking at the clock, and I was like, for some reason, I thought it's 6:30. If something happened right now, I would know exactly what time it was.
Wow.
And the next thing I remember, I woke up and the car was crushed like a Coke can. We got hit by a drunk driver. I was pinned behind the seat. My brother was here, and I mean, it didn't even look recognizable. I had injuries too, so I was kind of like in and out. But I remember, and I swear to this, I will stand on this on my grave to the day that I die, and even after. um, my stepdad, Roger, I heard him talking, and I was trying to make sense of it, and he said, "Oh, God, help us." And I thought to myself, why does he sound like a girl? I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. But I identified that as his voice. And they later said that he died instantly. So he was already dead.
Wow.
So somehow, some strange, I mean, just this, I mean, this is nobody was on these roads. I mean, this is like a back road. A man comes up and sees the wreckage, comes over. He didn't even know there were kids in the cars, how bad it was. My mom was still alive, and she was like, "Get the kids." She was badly injured. She died like 5 hours later. Um, but he pulled my brother out, and then they had to cut me out with the jaws of life, and then we went to the hospital. And when my grandmother finally got to us from Mississippi, because this was in Arkansas, she had a dream that my mother and my stepdad walked through the door together, and they were smiling. But the baby did not survive either. So that's how me and my brother came to live with my grandmother. But that's also a paranormal experience. Um, because I know what I heard, and it was physically impossible. And I believe he would have never left us if he had had the choice in that position, because he was very protective of all of us. So yeah, I mean, and I think it's more impactful for me in hindsight to think about that experience. That's exactly what that was like. Except I audibly heard it, which usually when I get spirit messages, it's not really audible. Um, it's more of a clear audience,
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I think when I moved into my grandmother's house, I had already heard the stories and everything, but there was this extra component of needing to really understand what that was, where are they? I couldn't make sense of it.
Yes.
So
Um, Go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, so then, I broke my femur in half, and so I had to miss school and I had to have surgeries and things. So I was at the house a lot, and I was home alone one day. Um, they would bring me my schoolwork, and I would do it. I remember sitting in the recliner watching TV, doing my schoolwork, and I had a brace on. Well, I went out. We had a side porch. That house was like an L shape. We had a side porch, and I went out, and I thought to myself, I wish I could see her one more time. And we had not had the funeral yet. I'm sorry, timelines are hard for me right now to remember this, but I remember we had not had the funeral yet. I did not want to go to the funeral, and I didn't go. I can't remember if this was the day of the funeral because I was by myself. So it may have been, but the point is I didn't know what they buried her in.
Hmm.
I didn't go. Well, my grandmother's bedroom had windows that here and here where you could see straight through to the backyard. But if you were looking at somebody walking, you would only be able to see them like from here to here. Well, after I had that thought, I looked through that window and I saw a pink chiffon dress drift across the window. And it terrified me because I knew it was my mother, and I was I was like, oh God, I don't want to see her. Don't come around the corner. And I went inside and I don't think I ever told my grandmother that. I think I told my uncle like way later, but they buried her in a pink chiffon dress. She had pink roses, and so crazy.
Crazy. Well, with who you are, does I mean for someone like me, if I experience that, it's going to be it would traumatize me for the rest of my life. But because of what who you are and what you can do, does it almost become like second nature or something that's just like I said, a part of your life now, and it's hard for us to understand that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's hard. Yeah, it is hard for me to explain it because, you know, I sense energy everywhere I go. This is part of the reason why I don't like to go in big crowds a lot. Like even when I was working like in the restaurant business, you know, I have to kind of like close myself off because, I used to work in a haunted house actually. Actually, I do have something coming up. Maribel in Brentwood, Tennessee is having a Phantom dinner on this Sunday, and I'm going to be reading tarot cards there. But
Oh.
that place was haunted, and they had many ghost stories. So yeah, it's just something where I'm like, okay, you know, I just acknowledge it, but I don't dwell on it. Sometimes I'll sit and kind of tap in, not into people's energy that I don't have permission to. That I'm not trying to go walk around in the grocery store and pick up everybody's ghost, but I will say, um, I have to be careful with spiritual hygiene to protect my energy. For instance, I went to the Pagan Pride Festival not that long ago, and I walked around and perused and picked up and touched everything and bought stuff. Well, lo and behold, I come home and I don't sage the stuff I brought in. It was either that or something may have kind of followed me home because ever since then, there's been some things. And even like one of the things the repairman is like, I've never seen this. I don't really understand what's going on. So, yeah, I'm going to be saging here soon because yeah. So as a spiritual person, it's like you're a moth, like it's like you're a flame,
Uh-huh.
and I believe spirits they can sense that, and a lot of them want to be acknowledged. Um, you know, I'm glad that I'm not one of those that sees them with my eyes because that would be pretty freaky. Now, I've seen things out of the corner of my eye many times. But it's more of a sense.
Hmm.
It's more of a kind of just a sense. There's different clairs that kind of the way information will come in. And when I'm doing mediumship, usually I see them clairvoyantly. So.
But it's nothing you can, which would be difficult. You can't just turn that on, turn that off. You have to kind of push it back because it would almost be, well, I don't know what the word is. You just get overwhelmed, it seems like it would be. Like you said, in a crowded place.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, so if you've ever listened, I think it's John Holland. Is it John Holland that is the psychic medium?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, he's a good example of somebody that explains it well. You just have to kind of it's like a switch. Once you've done it for long enough, like I have, and like he's done it way longer than me, you kind of learn to switch it on and off. You try not to. Now, I will say there are times when inadvertently you may be on, lax, and you may accidentally kind of bring something in if you go to like a haunted place, a cemetery. But there's spirits everywhere. They're usually not at the cemetery. They're usually with the people that their loved ones. That's why I always tell people, you can go to the cemetery, but they're not there. I mean, they're more likely to be like as close as just a thought.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm trying to answer the question that you asked me. I'm all over.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the
No, like
spot.
that's what you have to reel me in because I'll go off on tangents. Um, No, I think it takes practice, and like I said, it's like I liken it to like hygiene, like spiritual hygiene, to kind
Hmm.
of protect yourself. I mean, I have protection oils. I take salt baths every day, things like that to kind of. I wear Florida water. on my throat chakra, on the back of my neck, and on the crown of my head. And that's helpful as kind of a barrier for protection. You can also use holy water for that, or you can mix the two. Um, I will say that it is difficult for me, and I know a lot of other psychic mediums when we sleep, because oftentimes our guard is down when we sleep, and it's easy for spirit to come to us in dreams. I dream of dead people all the time, people
Wow.
who I have never seen, and I'm a lucid dreamer too most of the time. So the other day, like let's just say, for instance, I dreamt of this tall man. If I could draw, I wish I could sketch spirit. I wish I could like link up with a sketch artist and have them draw, because I see them in very like detail.
Wow.
But this guy was like, I don't know you. Who are you? Why are you here? And he just smiled at me, and I was like, okay. So, but I mean, that sounds crazy to somebody that is, guess, not like me, but I'm 43. I'll be 44 in February. I'm to the point where I am who I am, and if people don't want to accept it, I'm okay with that. But when I'm doing mediumship, I will tell you something that's interesting that I've discovered. If I'm reading for somebody who doesn't know they have abilities, or who doesn't know that they have mediumship abilities, I've done this a couple of times. They'll ask me to connect with one person, and all these different energies will start coming. Like I read for a hospice nurse one time, not that long ago. And she was, I said, well, there's this man here. And we were talking about the man. And I'm like, wait, wait. And it's like, you have to, as a medium, I learned this from my friend Renee, who's also a medium. She was like, you have to tell them to get in line. Basically, you have to say, look, one at a time, you, you know, please step back. And then you'll get people that come through who weren't very talkative in life, and they just don't have really a lot to say. A lot of times people misunderstand that all mediums are evidential mediums. That's not how it always works. Not everybody is like Teresa Caputo and John Holland and Tyler Henry. They've got some really heightened abilities, and you have to remember that that's Hollywood. So they've cut and edit, and sometimes I will get really specific things come through, and I'm like, wow, that blows me away. And then sometimes the message is just, hey, I'm here with you. I love you. You're protected, you know. So yeah, it's an interesting uh, job. It's an interesting life, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because I don't know what it would be like to walk around the world and just not believe in anything other than what's right in front of you, you know?
When's the last time you got a
What a
good
boring
night's
life.
sleep? When's the
Huh?
last time you got a good night's sleep? It seems to me that your brain never shuts down.
It doesn't. I think having small children, I think I haven't slept probably for 15 years. I mean, once I had kids, I just always have one eye open.
Yes.
But I wouldn't say that the dreams wake me up. I will say I have had nightmares, but at times throughout my life. But you have to remember, like, this is years of this going on. But I have had things that like one night when I first moved into this place, I was actually talking to somebody about the Bell Witch, and
Uh-huh.
one night, and we were talking about it, and this person happened to be from Adams, and there were stories exchanged, and I just left it and came home, and at like at the witching hour, 3 in the morning, I had had this ironing board that had been sitting up against the wall since I moved in. Like had been there had been there that it so long it had an indentation in the carpet.
Wow.
And there was a laundry basket in front of it. Well, so I hear a bang crash loud, and I thought, oh my God, what was that? It shook me awake. And I started looking around to try to figure out where it came from. That thing came off the wall and somehow went around that laundromat and banged and fell. So just things like that, and like kind of being, you'll hear other psychic mediums talk about, being poked at night. I've had many times, especially my last house. That house, there was a disappearance around that house, and the minute I moved in there, I felt some spirits there, and there was a smaller child, there was a man, and there was a woman. I won't go into it because that's it's a disappearance that's like a kind of a sore subject for the area. But anyway, it's just the way it is. I will pick up on information on missing people, and it's hard because you don't want to reach out and go, "Hey, I hope you want this information," because some people are not open to that, you know. But it would
Mhm.
be it would be really cool to work with missing persons cases to just give what I get. If I'm wrong, fine. But if I'm right, what if I'm right? You know. So, but in that house, I would very often sense, like, when you have kids as a mother, you can just hear like
Yep.
the separation of air. Like my ears are like supersonic too. I can hear everything. Just hear something, and I would think it was my middle, or my little would be with me, but my middle, and I would look over, nothing there, but I knew something was there. And then my littlest would point, and she would talk to something, and it was about yay high. And this is a kind of a spooky story. When I moved into that house, my little girl was babbling, talking. She wasn't talking all the way yet, but anybody that was my age and was a female was mama.
Uh-huh.
Anybody that looked like her dad was about his age was daddy, and she would do this in the supermarket. And then grandma, grandpa, age range, and then anybody that was her age would be Vivi. Well, I don't want to say my kids' names, or it would be my middle son's name, if different age groups. So that's how she identified
Hmm.
people. We were getting in the car one day to go to daycare, and she points clear as day to the driveway, nothing there. She said, Mama, and she said her name.
Wow.
Like two people were standing there, and it gave me chills because I had already picked up on this information. So I was like, confirmation. And it kind of spooked me. Like, it takes a lot to spook me, but I
I
was
bet
ready.
it does.
We got in the car, we got out of there. But yeah, I mean, it's just a day in the life. Like, it's normal, and I don't let it spook me too much. But I've had some times when I've had nightmares, and I've woken up, and you just get that feeling of like, mm, I feel like a little kid again in the dark. You know what I mean?
I know what you I know what you mean. Um, we're gonna come to a close. I need to have you on again and again because you have so much to talk about.
Yeah, I've got more stories. I've got, I mean, there's my stories and other people's stories about not only that house, but like throughout my life, I've lived in lots of houses. And I used to think, well, I guess every house I move into is haunted, but it wasn't. It was just that I was, sensitive. And
Wow.
my children also were sensitive. They saw things when they were little too that, you know, people confirmed, like, oh, that's his dead grandfather. But as they grew older, I think they kind of, I don't know, lost it. I think sometimes as we get older, we kind of lose
Really?
I don't think maybe not all of us. I think maybe we maybe don't recognize it, or we don't want to see it. I didn't. I mean, I wasn't that way, but I don't, my kids don't really talk about stuff like that now.
Hmm.
But my little will still. Hopefully, I hope she keeps it. I'm gonna try to pass something along, a little
Yeah,
leg.
I'm going to have you on every month, a regular every month, because I think you've got literally years of stuff to talk about. And
Yeah.
I know my listeners will be like, they want to know, they want to hear from you. So
Well, I would love to do it. I would love to have these stories like recorded because, they're important for my kids to know, for them to pass down to their grandkids, and they'll have an audio recording of me telling these stories.
there we
I have
go.
my grandma on tape telling some of these stories somewhere in my garage, and I need to dig it up. But it's on one of those old timey,
Yes. Is,
whatever.
is,
Can't
is it
dig it.
able to be played back anymore? That's the thing.
We'd have to convert it into something else. Yeah.
It is. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. November, you got to come back on. December, you got to come back on. I know it's going to be the holidays, but we'll figure out a time slot that you can do. I'll make it work for you. How's that? I will make it work.
That sounds great. I'd love to do that.
Yeah. This is Joel Wilson, and I will see you on the other side.